started because it's 9 a.m. Hello everyone, my name is Anjali I'm going to be in the 11th grade, a junior at DuPont Manual High School this fall. That's in Louisville, Kentucky. It's a JCPS, or Jefferson County High School. And I'm really delighted to be talking to you all today about entrepreneurship. It might be curious that a high schooler is talking about a subject like this one, but hopefully throughout my presentation you'll see that I have a significant amount of experience with entrepreneurship, and it is a really big passion of mine. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the College Board. So it's the nationwide organization that administers AP or advanced placement exams at the end of every school year. And these are for really rigorous course material subjects. In 2016, there were about 4.5 million AP tests administered across all subjects. There are over 30 AP exams in the country. But out of these 4.5 million, only 54,000 were AP computer science exams. And so of all of the tests taken in all subjects, only 1.2% were APCS. If we zoom in a little bit closer, we can see that only 12,000 of those 54,000 students were girls. So girls only made up 23% of APCS test takers. If we compare the statistics from around the country versus in Kentucky, we can see that when we look at students who are both minority and female, all around the country, only 5% of test takers were of this demographic, whereas in Kentucky, only 2% of all students that took APCS were both minority and female. That's a grand total of 8 students in our state, and that's a really alarming number. When we look at statistics like these, it's pretty clear that there is a real problem when it comes to diversity in technical education. And this is a really complex problem to tackle because it's really multifaceted. There are a lot of factors that play into it. But for a lot of multifaceted problems, there are multifaceted solutions. I believe that there are a lot of approaches to tackling a problem like this one. And so today I'd like to talk to you about one of those, entrepreneurship in particular. So we have to ask the question, what exactly is entrepreneurship? Some of us may be more familiar than others with the broad general topic. Essentially, it is the founding and creation of an idea or a business and actualizing something into a reality. There's a really nice quote by a Harvard Business School professor, Professor Howard Stevenson, who actually has the moniker of being the godfather of entrepreneurship. And I think it's really representative of what I'm trying to talk about today. So he says that entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity beyond resources control. And essentially what that means is that no matter what resources you have at your disposal right now, no matter what resources you were born with, if you have an opportunity or an idea in mind, the journey to get there isn't restricted by the resources that you have on hand. And so if we can say that anybody, no matter what resources they have, could be an entrepreneur, then what are some skills or traits that do characterize entrepreneurs? Well, based on who I know in my personal life, as well as the big ones that we hear about in the news like Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, these are the 5 main characteristics that I think it takes to be an entrepreneur. You have to be creative when you solve all of the problems that your business or idea might encounter. You have to be very willing to take risks. A lot of entrepreneurs have to leave secure, comfy jobs, and then every day they have to make decisions that will affect the success of their company. They have to be confident both in themselves and in their work. They have to persevere through all of the hurdles and obstacles they're going to encounter. And most importantly, an entrepreneur must be passionate about her work because otherwise, where is the motivation to go back and do it and push through every single day? Now, I've been surrounded by entrepreneurs all of my life. I was raised by 2 entrepreneurs. My mom has founded a software technology company, and my dad has been involved in startups all of his life, or all of his adult life, I guess. But further than that, I'm an entrepreneur. And I think it might be strange to you all that a high schooler thinks of herself as an entrepreneur. But in fact, I'm actually the founder of a nonprofit called Empowered. The mission of Empowered is to help train high school girls, minority girls in particular, with technical skills. And then to expose these high school girls to real-world opportunities in their communities and to partner them with women entrepreneurs in their local community. It's been a really long journey to get empowered to become what it is today. So just this summer, I ran a 7 weeks training program. This is actually the last week, but a 7 weeks training program with a cohort of girls during which we learned web development and web design skills. We worked with the Jefferson County Public Education Foundation and designed a website for them to be the face of the world. They worked with local small business owners to design websites for them, and it's been quite a spectacular project. But it's been a really long journey to get to this point, and I want to talk to you guys about what I've been through to get Empowered what it is today. This building is Mazik Middle School. It's where I spent 3 years of my life from 6th through 8th grade. And it's a really interesting place because at Mazik, half of the student body has come through applications. They're part of the Math, Science, and Technology Magnet program, so they're really high achieving. Whereas the other half of the student body is made up of students from the inner city, students from the surrounding area around Mazik. Mazik is located in the heart of downtown Louisville. There are several projects nearby, and it's kind of a rough neighborhood. And so that means that a lot of the students who attended school came from really rough upbringings. So in 8th grade, I tutored a literacy class, and the students and I would kind of talk every day about what was going on at home and their families and how they were doing. And a lot of them would talk about clothing stores that their moms owned or restaurants and cafes that their dads were running. And I live in the suburbs, and I had never heard of any of these places before. I had never heard of any of these small businesses, and I would never feel compelled to visit them because I just simply didn't know. And so whenever I would go home and Google a parent's cafe, I would find no Yelp page, no website, no Google presence, and I realized that minority-owned businesses really need to have better web presences. And so I did some research, and I found out that 90% of all restaurants fail in the first year. And a lot of restaurants are actually owned by immigrants and people from ethnic backgrounds. And it's because a lot of them don't have web presences. And so I kind of identified this issue because of people that I knew, people that I grew up with. And I wanted to do something about it. So I applied for an entrepreneurship incubator program for high school students, and that was called Catapult. I was really surprised when I was accepted to participate as a founder of a venture at Catapult because I had this really general, vague idea. I had no idea how I wanted to go about solving it per se, but I was really fortunate to have this experience. It was really transformative because through Catapult, I was able to build a business model for Empowered. It changed many times later on, but at least I kind of had a foundation from which to go off of. We learned a lot of design thinking and startup methodologies, and we were paired with advisors and mentors to kind of learn what we needed to know about the foundations of business. We were also paired with a team of students all around the country. We had never met them. We probably would never see them after the incubator was finished, and I have never seen any of the team members that I worked with after then. But that collaborative experience was really important because no business can be started by one person alone. At the end of the program, we had a demo day at Google, at the Google headquarters in Boston, for a bunch of investors, and that was amazing to go through that. But at the end of the program, I had been hit with a lot of information, and I had learned a lot and done a lot and prototyped a lot. And so I came back home, and I kind of started building websites for minority women entrepreneurs in Louisville. I was finding them from miscellaneous sources. I wasn't really doing this in a targeted way, and I was doing everything myself. So this was an example of a website that I built using Wix for a bakery called Seductively Sweet Confections. The best part about this website is that the woman who I worked with, Mrs. D, actually designed it all herself. I just did all the heavy lifting. And most of the people who I worked with were just like that. And I realized that if it was so simple for me to work with a woman like Mrs. D, that other high school girls, other high school students of color, anyone really should be able to do the exact same thing. And so I thought about how if I were able to pair minority high school girls with more women small business owners to make sort of a harmonious partnership, that both sides would be really positively affected. And it would create this virtuous cycle of women helping girls helping each other. Because high school girls are learning technical skills, they're able to give back to their community, and they're able to consider a whole new career track that they may never have wanted to pursue before. Whereas the women entrepreneurs, their small businesses are gaining a lot of traction, and they're able to hit their potential by utilizing technical services. And so instead of me going out and building a bunch of websites, I decided that I wanted to start with the girls instead. And so I wanted to implement a training program to teach some girls some technical skills who never would have looked out for that opportunity before. So again, I'm back to where I was 2 years ago with this really vague idea, not really knowing exactly what I want to do, exactly how I'm going to do it, and so I needed to figure out where to start and how to practically approach this problem. And so the first thing I needed, of course, was the money, and so I applied for a few grants. I applied for the Mayor's of Louisville's Summer Works program, and Summer Works is really interesting because participants actually get paid, and by participants I don't mean myself, I mean the girls whom I was training through the program. And that's really cool because a lot of the girls who are part of Empowered this summer came from really rough backgrounds, really impoverished homes, really difficult lives. And so for them, the salary was a really great incentive at the very beginning to get them to commit and to get them to come into work every day until they developed real interest in the work that they were doing. And then I also got some funding from Youth Build as well. And then I needed to figure out like exactly how I was going to teach them these skills because yeah, you can learn how to build a website, but how are you going to learn how to build a website? And so I went with exactly what I have always known. When I was in the 5th grade, I learned how to build websites in HTML and CSS on a platform called Team Treehouse. It's an online learning platform that has video tutorials. And the really cool thing about Treehouse is that you work on independent projects on the side, and you're not exactly guided through those, as in you have full creative reign, and it's really nice to be able to exercise the skills that you're learning through the video tutorials. The girls really loved Treehouse. They said that it was easy for them to learn from, but also easy for them to explore with, and so that was really valuable. I also wanted, like I said earlier, to expose them to community leaders. And I thought that the best way to do that would be to have a speaker series of powerful women from around the city and around the state. So these 3 women are a few examples of the 10 that we had this summer. Actually, a couple of them were male, but most of them were women. And most of them were also minorities. So we had an entrepreneur, a startup founder, Dr. Anjali Johnson. Lieutenant Governor Janine Hampton from Frankfurt came in to speak to the girls, and it was absolutely phenomenal because she is such an advocate of STEM education. We had some businesswomen like Mrs. Yamilka Rodriguez. She has started a fashion makerspace in Louisville, which is absolutely outstanding. So I didn't want the girls to have to sit through 7 weeks of working, coding, building websites in an office space 9 to 5, because that gets really boring really quickly. And so of course we had to plan some field trips. And I wanted to show them the really cool parts of Louisville, our city, that have to do with business and technology and introducing these things into the community. So we went to a couple of places, and one example is First Build. First Build is what's called a makerspace. So basically a bunch of individuals working on independent projects will be able to come in and use these community resources. They have a lot of high-tech equipment. And at first build, you don't have to be really experienced in the equipment to be able to use it. Of course, you need to know how to not harm anyone and harm yourself, but beyond that, it's really nice because it's funded by GE, and so there are people there who are absolutely willing to help out and teach you. We also went to a co-working space called The Park, which is in Germantown in Louisville. It's one of my favorite places. I'm actually an intern at an impact investing group called Access Ventures, and Access Ventures owns The Park, so I've always been really familiar with this place. And it's really nice because it's a great collaborative co-working environment. It's modeled after some of the ones that you would find in San Francisco or Boston, and it's I think that it's really been great for a lot of the startups that have been produced from the space. Our speaker series was held at the iHub in Louisville, which is another co-working space, but it's a completely different vibe from the park. It has a lot of really nice open space for a lot of nice brainstorming, and so it was really cool for the girls to be able to see that as well. So this is a photo from one of our speakers. I think this was from when the lieutenant governor came in and spoke. And I don't know if you can see you can't see my mouse on the screen, but the woman right next to the girl in the red dress, her name is Miss Alicia McLean, and she was the program manager for this project this summer. So through SummerWorks, the grant that I applied for, there has to be an adult or an instructor in charge to kind of manage the program and the day-to-day operations. And Ms. McLean was absolutely instrumental in the success of this program because she was able to facilitate really great connections with the girls. She was so motivational and inspiring, and she's a really smart woman. She's wonderful. There were a lot of things that I didn't know going into this summer that I was absolutely blown away by. So here's a picture of all of us girls with the lieutenant governor. Ms. McLean is not in this photo, but everyone else is. I had no idea what most of them were going to be like before the summer started because I hadn't known a lot of them personally. I did know a few of them, and I knew a few names and faces, and that was about it. I thought that they were coming in to be paid and that some of them might gain some knowledge, but really they were just there for the money. But every single one of these girls came in to work every day. They called it work, but then they would come to me separately and tell me, this isn't work, this is just us having fun. They would come in to the office every day and they would sit down at their computers before 9 a.m. They would come in by 8:30 early every day. They would sit down and they would get working on whatever they had left off at 5 p.m. the day before. We had a lot of collaborative projects, so oftentimes we would see the girls kind of meeting at lunch, and they were sitting at the lunch table talking about their website and how their design is looking and whether it's fulfilling the needs that need to be met. They couldn't tear themselves away from the work because they were so invested in it, because they really enjoyed what they were doing. They became extremely passionate. So through the 7 weeks, we had all of the girls write blog posts after every week just to kind of gauge how they were doing, how they were feeling, and reading the blog post every week was really heartwarming for me because it showed how much empowered actually mattered to all of them. So Shamia is a student who she's handicapped, and she at school has definitely faced, she's encountered issues with being handicapped and how other students treat her and look at her. And for her, being a part of Empowered was extraordinarily meaningful because it showed her that there are disciplines out there where how you look and how you are physically doesn't affect what people see you as at all. So I'll give you guys a minute to read through this. So another thing that I learned throughout this program about running an organization is that really, with a nonprofit or with something that isn't super defined at the very beginning, you are absolutely building the plane as you're flying it. I had no idea how some things were going to run at the very beginning. A lot of the speakers were only brought on as the weeks went by. We would say, are you available next week? Are you available the week after? Oh no, our program is ending. Please make some time. And I don't even think that there would have been any way that I could have anticipated some things at the very beginning. We didn't know exactly what skills we wanted the girls to acquire by the end. So we learned HTML and CSS. The girls worked a lot with WordPress because that's something that a lot of real companies use to build websites. And we didn't know how much time we would allocate to each skill. We didn't know how much time we would allocate to each project, but really the program formed itself as we went along, which was really cool. Okay, so experiment, fail, learn, and repeat. This really sounds like something that you would read in a textbook for business or a self-help book for entrepreneurs, but really it is something that I had to remind myself every single day. A lot of the failures or setbacks that we had were pretty minor, but every day I made mistakes, whether it was not telling the girls something that they really needed to know, or not telling Miss McLean something that she needed to know, not communicating properly. I made several mistakes, but the best part was that after every mistake, I had a support system with Ms. McLean to be able to discuss what I did wrong and how I could avoid doing that in the future. So the learn out of these 4 words was the most essential for me as a founder. But also with experimentation. After the first couple of weeks, it seemed like the girls were getting pretty comfortable, but they weren't necessarily interacting with each other a lot, and they weren't exactly interacting with me or with Miss McLean either. And so we started forcing them to run debriefs at the end of every day. And at the beginning, nobody wanted to do it because who wants to sit there and talk about everything they've gone through that day and how is everybody feeling and how are the skills sitting with you? But by the end of the program, the debriefs have actually become bonding activities now. I don't really know how that happened, but we have some girls who really like to facilitate these bonding exercises where everybody sits together and they'll make bracelets, and then they made bracelets with binary, and it was really awesome and nerdy, but they have grown together as kind of a cohort, and I know that in the coming school year, they're all gonna stay extremely close, which is great because it means that whenever a project comes up, they already have girls that they know to work with. So I encountered a lot of hurdles and obstacles as we went along these last 7 weeks. One really big one was when it came to partnering the girls with local community members who needed websites for their small businesses. As I mentioned earlier, I went through the whole ordeal of building websites for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, a year ago, a year and a half ago. And I had a really low hit rate in terms of how successful the partnerships actually were, because invariably these entrepreneurs got too busy. They didn't think they wanted a website anymore, or they ended up getting a family member to build it for them. And then at some point, all of the things that I had been doing would just kind of fall through, and then I would say, okay, and I would move on to the next one, because that's kind of what I had to do when it was just me. I wasn't charging you, I was just doing this to acquire the experience. And so it wasn't really a big deal at the time. But for the girls, it was really crushing when the exact same thing happened to them, when the business owners ended up falling through, and it was in no way their own fault. It just happened because these people are getting off the ground, they have these new businesses. Of course, their priority is not working with a high school student to get this website that they don't even really think they need. And so it was, I think, so important for the girls to have that experience of having partnerships not work out, because it meant that they then had to scramble because there were only 3 weeks left. And so they had to reach out to their networks, and they had to find business owners that they knew, or that their friends knew, or that their parents knew, which is how it really works in the real world a lot of the times, at least at the very beginning. That was a really critical experience for them, and for me as well, to see that this is something that happens and that it's okay. So on a more positive note, we ran into a lot of positive opportunities that I had no idea we would encounter. So like I mentioned, the girls actually built the website for the new JCPE Foundation. They're rebranding themselves as Future Up now, because Jefferson County Public Education Foundation is a mouthful. And so because of this rebranding effort, they wanted a new design team. And they reached out to me, and I was really confused because this community leader, Mr. Sam Corbett, the executive director, was reaching out to a high school student and trusting his foundation's web presence with a bunch of high school minority girls. That was shocking to me, and I think it was shocking to a lot of people who he worked with. The girls ended up presenting their work on the website at Doe Anderson, which is a top marketing firm in our city. And at the beginning of the meeting, it was very clear that the people who were there were kind of just sitting in because their boss told them to, because they didn't really care. But then by the end, they were searching for flaws in the websites. They were searching to come up with criticisms and helpful comments, because they didn't really know what to say, because the work of the girls was so professional that it really was top quality. It was exactly what the foundation needed. And Sam Corbett, the director, was so kind to help the girls like that, because they were so driven by that project. They saw that this white man was trusting them with something, and they said, okay, we're gonna prove ourselves, and they really did. That was really formative for all of them, and it was really spectacular for me to see that as well. So I think that for me, the biggest personal gain that I've gone from this experience is that I've been trying to teach all of the girls all of these skills: how to focus on a project, how to optimize their time, how to communicate, how to collaborate, how to be productive members of their society. And through the last 7 weeks, I've realized that I need to be exhibiting all of these qualities as well. Some of these traits I already knew I had, some of them I had no idea I had, and some of them I realized I severely lack. I lack the ability, or at the beginning of the program, I lacked the ability to be able to communicate with the girls both as a leader and a peer. And it was really difficult for me to figure out how to manage those interactions so that I wasn't coming off as an authority figure, but so that I wasn't right alongside them learning as well, because I had to be there to teach them and to help them with the skills. And throughout the last 7 weeks, I've had to step into that role. It's been really uncomfortable, or at least it was, and now it feels like I can absolutely handle something like that. And it's not just that, right? I've had to kind of grow as a person as I'm trying to help the girls grow. That's been really crazy empowering for me. So let's revisit the question that I asked at the very beginning of the presentation. Who is an entrepreneur? I listed off these 5 skills and I described them a little bit. And I'm sure that if I took a bet, everyone in this room would have some degree of each of these 5 skills. And that means that everyone in this room could potentially have the capacity to become an entrepreneur. So even if you don't have these skills, or even if you want to further develop these skills, there is a really great way to do that. I think that a lot of these soft skills that entrepreneurs have actually come from a technical background and learning or having a technical education. And that means STEM. That means computer science, computer engineering. It means math, it means science. But it's not just that. You have to integrate some art, you have to integrate some principles of design, some of the right brain qualities as well, because then when you're having to be analytical and creative all together, you gain real world experience. In the 21st century, I would think that there is no profession, no accelerated career track that requires you to use only analytical or creative skills. Everything is mixed together nowadays in all these disciplines. And that means that you're getting real world experience when you're having to incorporate all of these skills together. I think that technical education and technical training is crucial, especially for students in high school or even younger who don't think that they have the opportunity to pursue tracks like computer science or like business and entrepreneurship, like all of the girls that I worked with this summer. They all said that at the beginning of the program, not a single one of them was considering computer science as a major in college or computer science as an industry to go into. And now, all of them say that they either plan to major and take courses in computer science or that it's certainly an option that's been opened up for them. I think that not only do you have to learn these skills, you have to be able to execute them through real world projects. You have to be able to execute them with people, resources in your community. You have to be able to learn, but also practice, because if you're not making mistakes that are critical in a job sense, then you're not learning all of the things that you could potentially learn maybe 20 years down the line. So here's my call to action to all of you in the room. I really want to see more Miss McLeans in the world. There are two subsets of the population that definitely exist. There are girls like the ones who worked with Empowered this summer, who are waiting for opportunities like this one, who are searching for them and they just don't know where to look, they don't know who to ask. There are girls who don't even know that it is an option, but if they were given the opportunity, they would absolutely take it. And then there are people like me. There are other high school students and there are other adults and community members who really want to see the young generation grow and who really want to see the young generation adopt technical skills. I want to see more teachers and more community members bridging the gap between these two subsets of the population. Please help facilitate that connection, because Ms. McLean was really instrumental to the project, but really it was all up to the girls to do it on their own. She just had to kickstart it off. If there were more teachers, more adults, and more community leaders like Ms. McLean, it would be amazing to see both of these groups empowering the other. Thank you very much. And if you would like to find out more about my program, you can visit getempowered.co. And I'd love to answer any questions or discuss anything you might want to right now.
Anjali.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I hope you didn't just go over this because I have to step out for a second. What do you see as a high school student yourself, what do you see as a way to engage more female participation, specifically in computer science? Is there something that we can do from an educational system to facilitate that?
Sure. So are you talking about in classes in schools that already exist?
Or outside of school, really.
Okay.
I know you're doing excellent work outside of the doors of the school. What do you see as a way maybe school could engage more girls to participate in computer science?
It's a great question. So I go to Manual, which is a great school that really touts equality and opportunity for all. But I took AP Computer Science last year, and I was one of 3 girls in my class of 30. So even at a school like that, there aren't females, to your point. But how do I think it can be encouraged? Well, I think that actually really starts in the home. I think that parents need to be telling their daughters that technical education, careers in science, careers in business are not only just an option, but some of the best options. My parents have done that for me since I was very young. Not only are they in the industry, but even with other friends who I know whose parents aren't entrepreneurs or engineers, when from a very young age, the girls have been learning that you don't have to be a boy to be an entrepreneur or to be an engineer, it's really made a difference to shape them. So when we talk about it in schools, I think that a lot of it deals with the projects that they're working on. So females, by nature, care a lot more about the impact of the work that they're doing. Like, this is definitely a psychological phenomenon, and so that means that if there were more projects that were being executed in school that had to do with making an impact on the community or making an impact on the school student body itself, I think a lot more girls would be a lot more interested in participating in learning the skills required.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
What do you hear from girls in your school, like, or your friends? Do they say, I don't want to do that? That's not cool to do?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
From your
So
perspective.
my friends, yes, absolutely. And I think that that's why the experience with Empower this summer was really crazy interesting. Like I said, I didn't know a lot of these girls personally at the beginning of the program, and I probably wouldn't have gone out of my way to be friends with a lot of these girls simply because we didn't take the same classes, we didn't do the same activities, we didn't have the same interests. But when they had that first exposure, everything changed. It was no longer computer science is kind of like a boys thing, it's kind of not for us. Now it's like, okay, so like what's the next website we're gonna build? Okay, so what's the next skill we're gonna build? When are we gonna do apps? When are we gonna start building stuff in Java? What's Java? So everything changes once you take that first step. It's just that a lot of girls are apprehensive of taking that first step. Yeah.
When you met with the small business owners and discussed, how much detail did you and the girls get into as far as what businesses wanted on their website? Was it sort of a hand-in-hand thing, or did they just say, run with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first met with the business owners, so all of the business owners that we were initially going to work with came from one incubator in our city. And with all of them, we first discussed, Ms. McLean and I first discussed with all of them whether they would be interested in having websites at all and whether they would be interested in high schoolers providing the service. And all of them said absolutely. And then from there, the girls had to communicate with them to get all of the content and all of the information that had to be displayed on the site, because they weren't at first businesses that they had known about previously, and that meant that they didn't know about the products or the services or anything like that. Similarly with JCPE, all of the content was supposed to be provided by the foundation itself. The thing that we realized with both the small business owners and with Future Up or the JCPE Foundation is that the content never gets provided. Like that follow through doesn't happen, and so that means that one, you have to build a website without the content, and then show the business owner or the person that you're working with, hey, I have it ready, but if you don't give me anything, there's going to be a bunch of filler text that makes no sense. But beyond that, the girls did a lot of investigation and research on their own, because they didn't want to go and present these empty mock-ups of websites without any content. So they ended up like scrounging the internet for information on the foundation. With the small business owners, that wasn't really an option because they didn't have anything yet. And so there, it is critical that the entrepreneur really gives that information, because otherwise students can't do much in terms of the content without it. So. Yeah.
One more question. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally
peppering you
fine.
with questions. You mentioned you took computer science at Manual. Was that CSA, the Java course?
CSA.
Do you all have computer science principles?
Yes, Manual does have that course. But
did you take that course, or did you?
So this was the first year it was introduced. I was, or like last year, right? And I was
you
a
were already
sophomore.
probably
Yeah, and so it was only offered to freshmen. But it seems like a really interesting course. So I think that something like computer science principles is really beneficial for teaching a lot of those skills that I talked about for entrepreneurs, because all of the design thinking and logic aspects are all introduced. Yeah.
Do you see that as being a better entry point for students to come in as freshmen to get that, obviously before they go on to take CSA or other
Yeah, I think that
coursework?
there has to be some prerequisite to CSA for sure. But I say that, so with Empowered, we're trying to currently actually design a course for the next semester that we want to have as like a GCPS course. And that's what Ms. McLean and I are working on right now. So we've decided that we want to move from websites into application development. And so we were kind of talking about how we wanted to do that, how we wanted to make the jump from HTML and CSS code into like real logic code. There were a couple of things that we discussed, but we were both looking at Swift Playground the other day. So do you know about Swift, the
Absolutely.
iOS? Yeah.
We're going to be running, I guess I can talk about it. We went to Apple probably 2 months ago, and we're working to have 4 trainings around the state of Kentucky in Swift Playground.
Oh, wow, okay.
Apple is paying for 2 of them, and we are paying for the other 2. Be on the lookout for that. I'm Scott Usellis, by the way, if I haven't met you before. If you want more information on that, come see me and I can plug you into that work. That'll be happening at some point during this next school year.
That's that's pretty amazing because just this week we've been talking about how we can leverage something like Swift Playground because it's so simple to get started. It makes so much sense. It's all presented so well, and so for these girls, I'm fully confident that they could jump into something like that and not really struggle with it. But then if you really wanted the whole technical experience from a classroom standpoint, it would definitely be beneficial to have something like CSP before CSA. Yeah.
And Apple is here. Apple Educate. Jenna Collins. I don't know if I can't remember if she's presented yet. I think she went once yesterday and once today. So
Awesome.
if y'all are interested in Swift, looking at that, look for Jenna's session.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So do you see that as a good? I apologize.
It's okay.
Do you see that as a good entry point for even a middle school or a freshman?
Are you talking about CSP?
The Swift Playground.
Oh, yeah.
They actually have new coursework.
Yeah.
that they just released, I think, 2 months ago.
Okay.
Like you may not be familiar with that yet, but in your experience with Swift, do you think that would be a good on ramp, even more
Yes,
so than maybe
I
Swift?
do, and it's really interesting because it's unconventional. So the way I learned how to program was from Hello World, and then building up from there, and that's boring. It's so boring. I really didn't get into programming or anything like that until I started working on a project that had real world impact. I built an arsenic sensor last year, and it was a really complicated project. It took a lot of time, but it's something that I really cared about, and that made me gain a lot of interest and passion for computer science. And so I think that something like Swift Playground, which makes it interesting from the get-go, it's exciting from the get-go, is great for encouraging kids who may be initially averse to computer science to getting into it. I think that it's a great tool from what I have seen.
And just as an aside, that's today from 1 to 2:30 in the Poplar Room in the Review Tower, if anybody's interested in that. And Jenna can answer a lot of those questions if you all are interested about Swift.
Okay, well, thank you all. I really appreciate this opportunity and you all coming in to listen. So thank you very much.